Microphones are live.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and begin the meeting. Can we please start with our roll call?
Councilmember Rivers,
Here.
Councilmember Lemus,
Here.
Councilmember Harvey,
Here.
Mayor Sparks.
Here.
Show Vice Mayor Ford is absent.
All right, thank you. I invite you to stand to join us for the land acknowledgement, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. The city of Cotati recognizes that we're on the ancestral lands of the coastal Miwok, who are the original caretakers of this area. We respectfully acknowledge the indigenous peoples who have been stewarding and maintaining a relationship on this land as knowledge keepers for millennia. This acknowledgement does not take the place of authentic relationships with indigenous communities, but serves as a gesture of respect to the land that we are on. And please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have minutes from our regular meeting on March 12th. Were there any changes from the council to the minutes? Yes.
So I just have a couple small typos that Damien asked me to correct here. So the one is 7A should be women's history, not woman history. So the A should turn to E, and then there should be an apostrophe between the N and the S. Thought there was one more. No, I think the next one's for the agenda, so that's it.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the chambers who would like to make a public comment about the minutes from last meeting? Can we please go to Zoom?
Thank you, Mayor Sparks. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon if you'd like to make a public comment on the minutes. Mayor Sparks, that'll end public comment.
All right, thank you. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve?
Move to approve the minutes?
A second?
With the corrections to it?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Okay, the motion passes. Announcements. I'll read off some announcements. Meeting orientation for new attendees and viewers. In conformance with the Brown Act and the adopted City Council rules, the meeting agenda includes items labeled as action items where the City Council may consider the item. If the City Council considers the item, citizens will be afforded the opportunity to provide comments relative to the item being discussed. The meeting agenda also includes a citizens' business item, which is the designated place on the agenda where citizens have the right to say whatever they wish. However, the Brown Act prohibits the City Council from taking action or considering any item that is not on this agenda to ensure that other members of the community who wish to provide comment are notified in advance through a properly noticed meeting agenda. Measure S supports police services, a variety of recreation programs for all ages, and the maintenance of our streets, parks, and public buildings. See details on the web at cotadicity.org. Citizens interested in receiving City of Cotati community alerts via text or email are encouraged to sign up with Civic Ready by signing up on the city's website, www.cotadicity.org, under the How Do I link at the top of the homepage. Like always, we love to hear from you, so please feel free to contact the city at 707-792-4600 or info@cotadicity.org. If you have a non-emergency issue after normal business hours, you can contact us at 707-792-4611. And of course, if you have an emergency, please contact 911. Continue to look for updates on the city's website and social media channels available on Facebook, Instagram, and Civic Ready. This takes us to the approval of the final agenda action item. We will only open this for public comment if we have any changes or modifications to the agenda. Are there any proposed changes?
No proposed changes tonight, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. That takes us to citizens' business and public comment for consent calendar items. Any member of the public wishing to speak to the council on any items listed on the consent calendar or any matters not listed on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda. Pursuant to City Council Policy 2023-01, comments of any member of the public are normally restricted to a total of 3 minutes in length per person for matters not on the agenda, and a total of 3 minutes per person in length for any and all items on the consent calendar. The mayor may extend the time limit for a reasonable time where a disability accommodation has been requested. To facilitate public comment, the deputy city clerk will alert speakers when there are 30 seconds remaining. Do we have anyone in the chambers who wishes to speak for citizens' business or the consent calendar? Coming up.
Good evening, council. I'm Shelley Berman. I'm a resident of Cotati. And I just want to thank you, number one, for your courage to pass a ceasefire resolution. We're still the only city in the county who's done it. And I didn't realize it was such a thing, that it would create such controversy. So I'm so proud. No tears. And I want to take you on my morning walk this morning. So the clouds were beautiful. Me and my little poodle went out, and when I got to East Cotati to cross the street to go to the path on the other side that goes to Commerce, I started being assaulted by gas-powered equipment for, leaf blowers and weed whackers, and somebody is working cleaning up the creek, Gravenstein to Commerce, and there were so many, I can't even count on my hands how many gas-powered things there were. It was an assault on my senses, my smell, my hearing, my eyes, my lungs, and I had the thought, gosh, I know Sonoma's got a ban on these gas-powered equipment for, what am I trying to say? But you know what I'm saying. And why don't we? So I thought I'd come in and ask. And also I wanted to ask who who is doing this cleanup by the creek? Because it seems like they do a clear cut by the creek and take out trees, and I don't understand, and I wonder if there's anybody in the city who is paying attention to what they're doing. And they don't take out trash out of the creek, plastic out of the creek, and if they're associated with the Laguna Foundation or with the water company or somebody, it would seem like they're close enough to it that they could get to it. And we do have a resident who likes to go in the creek and clean up. And it would be nice if he didn't have to, if somebody else was there to do it. So when we got past all the assault on my senses, I heard the birds singing again. I saw the clouds. I appreciated where I live. And I got to speak to my neighbors and people along the path, and it is an opportunity for me to ground myself, but today not so. So I wonder about the opportunity to do a ban and if that would be possible. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else who'd like to make a public comment? Can we go to Zoom?
Thank you, Mayor Sparks. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. Lori, you have the floor.
Once again, I'm talking to you about code enforcement and reeling them in. Less than 2 weeks ago, in those chambers, I was in a closed hearing. I was by the code enforcement attorney.
Excuse me, Lori, can you speak up? We can barely hear you. I want to hear what you're saying.
Can you hear me better?
Just a tiny bit? Or is there a phone you can pick up, or are you on a speaker? Oh, that's better.
Yeah.
That's much better. Thank you.
Okay. Let's. Can I start over because I just missed? Thank you. I wanted to speak about you once again, reeling in code enforcement, especially the attorney slash code official, because he's going after selective enforcement and applying the laws differently. And at a closed hearing 2 weeks ago in those council chambers, that attorney accused me of collusion with my supervising attorney. I was there as the paralegal for speaking to you as a citizen against code enforcement. They used it. And I'm the one who was a co-plaintiff in the free speech list. This is just, I've been accused of, in the past, I've been accused of perjury. I've been accused of, now I'm being collusion, and they're just getting cruel. It's gonna end up in federal court. Once again, you guys are digging yourself deeper and deeper into this hole, and you don't seem to be wanting to get out of it. You just want to seem to continue. And it's cruel to us citizens. It's retaliation. It's if you speak against the city, you're going to get code enforcement or other kind of personal consequences to you. It's well known. Your selective enforcement, and they're just going farther and farther with George Barrick of, and the attorney doesn't care because he earns $350 or something an hour. You guys need to get real, stop this. Stop this code enforcement. I mean, 10 years ago, you guys didn't enforce for 18 months codes against the next door neighbors, and now you've gone swung the other way, and you're making up codes basically to suit yourselves. This all needs to stop, and I'm just tired of talking about it and having consequences for it. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comment. That brings us to the consent calendar. Does anyone on the council wish to pull a consent calendar item?
I want to pull A just for a question.
Okay. So that leaves us with item B. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve item B.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Okay, that takes us to direction on future agenda items. Does anyone have a future item? Did I? Were we going to move A to the regular agenda items?
Can I just ask for, it looks like there's a typo on B, the consideration. I'm not sure how important it is to correct that. I just want to draw attention to it.
Yeah, thank you, noted.
All right, does anyone have any direction for future agenda items? Okay, so that will move us on to our regular agenda. So let's go ahead and do item A from the consent calendar first. Is there a staff report about did you want to report or you just wanted to ask a question, Councilmember Rivers?
I think I can just ask a question,
Sure.
if that's okay. So in what I was reading, if I'm understanding it correctly, so it's a 17-week event, so 17 events. And it's great. Well, maybe I shouldn't editorialize, but there's an offer or a request for half off of everything, except for the daily damage deposit, which is normally $250. And if I'm reading it correctly, the staff is proposing to double that to $500. But then when I see at the end, it shows plus a refundable deposit of $500. Whereas it's 17 days, right? So is that 250 times 17, or is it just 500 total?
It's 500 total for the 17-week event.
Okay, so is that considered that's like way more than half, right?
It's unique because the $250 damage deposit would be what we collect for a one-day event, but it just doesn't make sense to collect $250 17 times. So this is how we've done it in the past years, and it seems to
Okay.
work out okay.
So just in general, when it's a multi-day event, the deposit is based on one day.
Yeah, I mean, the core amount is based on one day, but it's essentially a 2-day deposit, I guess you'd say. 250 times 2, 500. But rather than collect it 17 times, they just collect it twice, because 500 has seemed to have been enough of a security deposit for even a longer event.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, again, editorializing, but, I love the farmer's market. So I definitely don't want it not to happen. I just wanted to clarify because I think what confused me was the daily, right? If it's 17 days, doesn't that mean it's actually 8,500, not 500? So I just wanted to make sure. Okay. That was really my only question.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the council? All right, let's open it up then for public comment on this item. Does anyone in the council's chambers wish to comment? So we'll take it to Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Sparks. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment on this item. Mayor Sparks, that'll end public comment.
Okay, great. Yes.
I have one more procedural question. So because of the nonprofit that I run, I am planning to participate in this. Am I allowed to vote on its authorization if I'm going to participate it as the ED of a nonprofit that I volunteer for?
I don't think there's any direct relationship. Like in the future, you're gonna request to participate, but it's not directly related to the item in front of you. It's something that will happen in the future. Is that correct? Whether, I mean,
So if I don't.
as a vendor, you're gonna sign up as a vendor at
Yes.
some later date.
Right.
Yeah, I think you can participate in this.
That's okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I would like to move that we approve this.
Okay. Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the farmer's market event. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that passes unanimously. Next, we will move on to the presentation of the Housing Element Annual Report.
Thank you, Mayor Sparks. Planning Technician Eli Areola will present this item.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Sparks, council members, members of the public. My name is Eli Areola. I'm a planning technician here with the city. And tonight I will be presenting the 2023 Housing Element Annual Progress Report. Next slide, please.
Technical issues, one moment, please.
No worries.
There we go.
Thank you. For a little background, the housing element is one of 7 required elements of the general plan. Unlike the other 6 elements, the housing element is on an 8-year update cycle, and this is the first progress report of the 6th cycle that spans from 2023 to 2031. Housing element annual reports have been required by the state since 1980, when the state also began requiring scheduled housing element updates. The city is required to submit APRs to the Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD, and the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, or OPR, by April 1st for the previous reporting year, which for the housing element and general plan APRs is the calendar year. The purpose of the APR has been to demonstrate a jurisdiction's progress towards meeting its regional housing needs allocation, or RHNA, which is determined by our Regional Council of Governments, who for Cotati is ABAG-MTC, or the Association of Bay Area Governments and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. The city's RHNA progress is summarized in Table B of the report. The APR also serves to demonstrate a jurisdiction's progress towards meeting other commitments within the housing element. Specifically, the adopted housing element programs and progress made on these programs is detailed in Table D. There are some new tables included in this year's APR, and the APR format is updated regularly as new reporting requirements are adopted by the state. These new reporting requirements are reflected in Table A2, which lists the number of units issued entitlements, building permits, and/or certificates of occupancy. Table C summarizes any sites that were rezoned to accommodate the RHNA. In Cotati, there were none. The status of all locally owned land designated as surplus land can be found in Table H. A report on any local tenant preference policy can be found in Table K. And local early action planning, or LEAP, reporting can be found in the LEAP reporting table. And the city did not utilize any LEAP grant funding in 2023. Next slide, please. Thank you. Cotati's 6th cycle RHNA is broken down by income category, including 60 units affordable at the very low income level, of which 30 units must be affordable at the extremely low income level, 34 units affordable at the low income level, 39 units at the moderate income level, and 101 market rate units for a total of 234 units required by RHNA. Next slide, please. As has been the trend for the past few years, the legislature has passed a number of bills related to housing, and legislation passed in 2023 continues to try to streamline the approval process for housing development projects. This includes allowing more projects to be ministerially approved and creating more CEQA exemptions for housing development projects. The legislature is also keen on removing constraints on construction. This includes construction costs, and the legislature is focused on the cost to build parking. Bills have been passed to further reduce parking requirements, specifically within 1/2 mile of major transit stops, which in Cantati would be 1/2 mile around the SMART station, and allow more developments within urbanized areas to share parking. Reducing governmental constraints on development is also considered a constraint on construction, and the legislature has moved to reduce review timelines, standardizing development impact fees, updating the building code, and creating amnesty programs for unpermitted ADUs and JADUs. Finally, the state has also expanded HCD's enforcement authority over state housing laws. Dr. House, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring to the council's attention, there's a note on page 46 of the packet, and it essentially, given the city's requirement for 15% of all residential projects over 10 units to be inclusionary or affordable housing units, and then the state density bonus allowances that say any project that provide 15% of their units as very low income is automatically entitled to receiving a density bonus. Generally, staff anticipates a majority of projects we see moving forward are likely to be density bonus. And so just to make the council aware of that, kind of a combination of how local policy will likely drive some implementation of some of these new state allowances. And then the other thing that's worth noting is that the code currently identifies that the council grants density bonuses. However, the state has taken that off the table. It's more of a by right. And so as a part of the last development discussion we had at the council level, staff identified that, and we just wanted to highlight it again as a part of this discussion, given that it's a very significant change from past practices and definitely something that we need to address with the code update moving forward.
Kind of a follow-up question based on something you said. We're anticipating to get a lot of very low income units, but on the slide it said something about that 30 out of the 60 very low have to be at the extremely low. Is the threshold for getting that density bonus extremely low or very low? So are we likely to get very many extremely low out of that?
It's very low, and I do not believe we're likely to get extremely low. If you look at I think extremely low is 0 to 30% of the area median income. And so what that essentially translates into is supportive housing.
Yeah.
And supportive housing is a whole different kind of category of housing. It requires a lot greater subsidy, ongoing subsidy, because generally there are staff and other nonprofit or governmental people tasked with assisting those folks who live in that type of housing with navigating some of whatever the challenges they may have. And so just know that is likely to be the most challenging category for any community to meet their RHNA in.
Okay, thank you. If we go over on our very low, can it count for our low income units? If we have, or do we have
Yes,
to be?
it would count.
Okay.
It would count.
Okay, thank you.
Can I follow up on that? So it showed in there that we have 60 very low. So if by some miracle we get 60 of those and 30 of them are not very low, does that penalize us? Or if we get the 60, since that's the way the numbers were handed down, how does that work?
It's a good question. So it would not, we would meet the 60 on the surface, but then we would not meet the extremely low income. And I don't know kind of how that extremely low, 50% of that number being extremely low, I don't know how that was determined, whether that's an HCD interpretation or tied to with one of the more recent changes in state law. So it's not likely that we would be given credit for that.
So if we do 60 very low and 0 extremely low, even though we did the 60, we'll only get credit for 30. Is that another way of saying it?
I believe so, and just to kind of, what that really means is I think we would be subject, if someone wanted to do an SB 35 project and provide extremely low income housing, we would be subject to that.
Okay. This report, I know there's 100 different laws that have been passed. Is there any exception or acceptance or rejection of the annual reports with all these new laws, or do we just file the report and?
Yeah, so to Eli's point, HCD has really ratcheted up their kind of enforcement arms. And so as a part of that, they're really taking a lot more time to go through the annual production reports and make sure, essentially track how we're doing. And in the next slide, there's some things I want to get to. So I'd like to postpone answering your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Next slide, please. Okay. In 2023, 3 ADUs were built. 6 units were entitled at 902 East Cotati Avenue, known under the project name East Cotati Cottages. There were 127 proposed units in development applications received by the city. Those proposed units include 1 ADU and 126 units proposed in the Cotati Village 2 multifamily project. And despite only having 3 units built in 2023, staff is not concerned about meeting the Reno requirements at this point. This council approved 176 units in the Cotati Village 1 project on February 27th. And the Redwood Row project, consisting of 167 units, is currently under staff review. These units are not reflected in the annual progress report because no action was taken on them in 2023, and actions would be considered the issuance of entitlements, building permits, or certificates of occupancy. And so the city has a significant amount of units in various stages of the entitlement process, but they've just not been reflected in this past year's APR.
So what about the entitled project down on Santero? Where does that fall in these numbers?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's not reflected here. It still is entitled, but the developers have indicated they are not going to build it. It's for sale. The people we've talked to who may be interested in purchasing that property are actually interested in trying to look at a different project. And so we just are not accounting for it because it's, I guess the status is unclear, even though it is an entitled project, and that's a good point. We could have noted that here, but it does not live in the APR.
Okay, and I seem to recall, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, we also approved a 10-unit project on East Cotati Avenue last year. What happened with that?
That's the 6-unit cottage housing project.
Oh, I thought it was 10 units. Okay.
I think it was 10 parking spaces,
Okay. Oh, all right. Okay, thanks.
10 bedrooms.
And then we talked about all the ADUs and junior ADUs they could have, and it could be a lot more than that, right?
All right, thank you. You can carry on.
Flayhaven, actually, the city manager just reminded me, so we also approved a single-family subdivision on Old Redwood Highway, Pink Viking or Flayhaven Estates. Similarly, that project was submitted a long time ago. Before I worked for the city, and was just approved, but it also was not action taken during 2023. 3. Sorry, I'm looking at Eli because he filled out the report. And so it's not reflected, and I should have been consistent in identifying that as another project. It wasn't a large-scale project, and it wasn't as fresh in the kind of the ether of the community's perspective. So those are the two that I wanted to highlight as why they're not included, but that's absolutely correct. That one's also not included because of just the timing of when it was applied and when we took action didn't fit cleanly into any of the categories of the APR.
We can ask questions, yeah.
So my question was about ADUs, and I saw that you had a upcoming program to provide amnesty for unpermitted ADUs. Do we have a number, and are there any of those numbers kind of included now or in the future?
Yeah, so we're not sure about kind of the number of unpermitted units that may be out there. It's often a converted garage or maybe a small addition. And so that's an uncertainty, but the state has passed some legislation which essentially requires all cities to do that as a way to further support ADU construction, but then also to accommodate the people who may have built that and just the needs of getting a permit and all the process it'll take, essentially acknowledging that there'll be some funds that are required for them to be able to do that.
So they'll be required to do some sort of upgrades or maintenance in
Depending. So it depends.
depends.
Oftentimes if someone, because how the building code works is if you come in to pull a building permit today to legalize construction that was done, let's say 10 years ago, you're subject to the rules in place today. And so it's assumed that even something that was legally built a decade ago, but not with the benefit of a permit, trying to permit itself today would have some changes that would be required. It's not certain, but the amnesty program by the state also requires us to give somebody 5 years to go through that process to legitimize their ADU.
Will the state provide any kind of funding or through the program to help?
No,
Okay.
it's just on us to
And then will those ADUs then at that point be counted?
they will be, that's
Okay.
correct.
All right, thank you.
And we actually, it's worth noting, we did just have that exact situation of an apartment unit in downtown where there was an apartment above a storefront that had been storage space that had been converted. They saw the benefits of permitting that, came in, went through the process, and we took credit for that, or we will take credit for that unit in the 2024 APR because it's a new unit on paper.
All right, is it a question about this slide or? Okay, go for it.
Auxiliarily, if that's a word. Just you had mentioned that all of this is planned and that actionable, meaning starting to be built, people moved in, or the examples you gave. When are we held accountable for that?
So the overall 234 units, we have to meet by the end of the 8-year period, so 2031.
Okay.
But there are check-ins along the way that essentially make us subject to by right development such as SB 35 if we're not meeting milestones.
Okay. So the milestones in between it being approved on paper and someone moving in.
Or just,
Right.
so as an example, we have a very low or a low income RENA category of what's the unit count?
34.
Approximately 30 units, 34 units. If we had not built any of those in 2 years, HCD has the right and would likely flip a switch saying Cotati is now subject to SB 35 projects that are proposing low income units as a way to try to spur us to be able to meet that income category.
Okay, but I heard you say we're not worried about that because there's so much being planned
As of right now.
right now. Okay. Thank you.
Slide, because I want to let poor Eli get through his presentation. Okay.
So, no, I'm a little confused about what gets included and what doesn't get included in there, because we've got, you mentioned, we brought up Cotati stations, but we also have the 120 East Cotati that also was an approved. So how does that work with HCD where we entitle things and approve them and then developers come back and say, sorry, we're not going to build this? How does that get reconciled and taken care of?
So there's categories now that HCD is tracking, and Eli, you can add to this if I missed something, but when projects are submitted, when projects are acted upon by the jurisdiction, so approval by the council, when building permits are submitted for and issued, I think, but maybe just issued.
Just issued.
So when building permits are issued. So they're tracking each of those steps in a project. And the idea is that, they'll see project was submitted in 2022, well, let's use 2024, then it was approved in 2025, and then building permits were issued in 2026. And then they'll, in theory, be able to see delays that result in the process, and they could follow up to see if it's maybe something that they feel the city could do to address that delay, something the developer could do to address that delay. So it's allowing them more nuanced details.
Okay, because oftentimes it's the financing, they can't get financing for them, and I just don't know how we communicate that as really nothing we can do other than, I guess give them all our money, but.
So I just want to make a point, which is that these are snapshots in time, right? You might entitle something, the entitlement might be abandoned, and so the next year it wouldn't show up, right? That was what you did in 2023. It was entitled. That might go away, right? So it's just a report that's done every year. They might look at it, say, well, what happened with this? And you could respond and provide the information. They're just using it to review and make sure you're, meeting your obligations under the housing element. They're forcing us to put it in writing so that then they can look at it.
Okay.
I don't think they really, I don't know how in-depth they're going to get. It kind of depends on how aggressive they are. But I don't want to say it's just a report, but it really is just a report, right? We put this information out there, and we're not held directly to it. They can use it, though, as a vehicle for doing some, revoking your housing element or something like that.
Okay, that's the scary part.
Please continue.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. And Director House will now present the housing element programs.
Yeah, so I just want to bring attention to, this is kind of one of the specific slides where we're really talking about all the efforts we're doing to support housing. And this conversation or this question was asked as a part of the budget discussion, where we just had a couple lines in the budget that said, implement housing programs or housing element programs and implement state legislation. And I think it was the mayor who asked the question, well, what about a housing strategy? Like, what are we really doing? And so I just wanted to draw attention to Table D, because essentially Table D is a summary of the 30-plus programs that we've committed to in an effort to support housing through the housing element process. One of these is the ADU amnesty program. And another is getting back to Councilmember Harvey's question that I am now trying to remember.
Councilmember Harvey, could you help him remember
You had
what
asked
your
the question and
was?
I punted on it. Was it the consequences? Or, no. Anyway, I apologize. Essentially, Table D is providing a status update on all of the various programs that we're trying to move forward with. And I think it's important to note a few of the highlights that we've committed to. So one was we're really leveraging our relationship with nonprofits. And I would also include the County Community Development Commission in that, so the CDC. As one of the smallest jurisdictions in the county, we have limited resources for housing. We have no staff in the city dedicated to housing. It's, Eli and myself, essentially. And so we are doing everything we can to support housing and all of the things in the programs, but we're going to do everything we can do kind of leverage our abilities by accessing resources available to us. And I would just really want to thank Legal Aid and some of the other nonprofit folks out there who we do refer folks to regularly, and they're very supportive and helpful. We're also committed to streamlining our process and supporting individual housing projects, and so that's programs 2-2 through 2-7. And that's some of the things that we've done. You've seen us proactively rezone parcels, and you'll see us continue to do that as we come forward with some of our city-initiated efforts to remove some of the governmental constraints to housing that HCD has identified or we've identified through the housing element. And then just lastly, it was also a critical element of the council and of HCD and obviously of staff as well to really focus on supporting diversity and combating discrimination in all the housing element programs that we are implementing. And so there are specific programs tied to that. And the one on ADU amnesty is actually kind of in that vein, basically not penalizing somebody just because maybe they didn't know what the requirements were, or they had a need for a family member and they built some housing and then now it didn't meet the code or it wasn't permitted at the time, but now there's a process whereby somebody who was just trying to meet that need can kind of legitimize that effort that they did. And so I just would encourage the council to spend some time on Table D, because we are doing a lot of efforts. A lot of those things the council never rises to the council level other than at this time. And so I did think it was really important to highlight that work, because it's a lot of important things that we're doing that may not ever rise to this level of kind of public viewing. Oh, and then, yeah, getting to the extremely low. How are we going to meet extremely low? So it's through some of these programs that we're going to look to the ability to try to support and get extremely low income units built in the city. But I do think that's going to be the most challenging category, as I said, for us to be able to provide, just because of the small stature of Cotati, the limited funds we have available for affordable housing units. And essentially, as I said, that's basically supportive housing. That's one step above a transitional housing, which is essentially a shelter. So it's a very challenging number of units or type of housing to provide. We do have a few units here. The county bought a home and converted those units are likely meeting that category. But that was essentially the county coming in with some of their resources and providing those units, and it just happened to be in our community.
Yeah, is it a question on the report or a general question? Okay.
So on the supportive housing, you bring up a really good point there that usually it means that you need the services wrapped around what's going on there. And being a small city, we don't really have the services that are needed to wrap around that. How do we navigate that from a HCD perspective? I mean, even if we were to put homes here without the services, how does that help move things along and get people, where they need to be?
Yeah, I don't know that the HCD lens recognizes that. I'm kind of editorializing on, if you look at what 0 to 30% of median income really means, it translates to supportive housing. That's not recognized when the label of extremely low income is just said, you must provide 30 units. Those two needs are not connected in that discussion or RHNA kind of allocation.
Well, that's unfortunate, because that's really what needs to happen in order for that to really be successful. You really have to have, the services going hand in hand, because often with, 30% income, you're going to need food services, and you're going to need health services, and all of the above, sometimes employment services, to really make yourself, kind of move upward.
Yeah, question?
Oh, I think in response to that, I think that even if we can't provide it, like you said, some of the partnerships with Legal Aid Foundation, some of the other ones, do have a lot of that and those resources and referrals. So I'm wondering how we can work with them more to kind of provide those resources to community members.
Yeah, so the programs, there's a lot of discussion about things we're doing to be able to provide those services, but that really is to existing residents. So then I think the point that Councilmember Harvey's speaking to is how would we expand the services and the unit numbers to provide for another 30 of those families to be able to have homes here in Cotati, and that's really the challenge that I see.
Next slide, please, Kevin. It is recommended by the Community Development Department that City Council review the provided information, identify any concerns or direction for staff, and file the report for future discussion. Director Hausch and I are available for any questions.
Okay, thank you so much. Did anyone have any other questions before we open to public comment? Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to, it's kind of, well, so you mentioned the county came in and has these homes that have the services already. Has there been discussion about partnering with the county and their services to, like, we provide the house and they provide the services, partnering that way, for example?
Well, so interestingly, at the most recent CDC meeting, the city has a seat on what's called the City and Towns Advisory Commission, which we make decisions on county funds on how they're going to allocate them. They're kind of retooling right now. They have a new executive director, and then also a lot of the COVID funds sources that were tied to and intended to support certain things are now pivoting. So I think right now the funding structure is in somewhat of an unsettled state, and so the ability to try to proactively plan for what funds are going to be available for those types of projects is just not available right now.
Okay, so maybe back to Councilmember Lemus's idea then with the nonprofits, partnering with them.
Yes.
Yeah, I had a question too on 4.6 culturally appropriate facilitation involvement. Is this like a program that will be starting, or have we already provided those type of translation of documents in that arena and housing element area?
Yeah, so we're starting, so when we were doing the housing element program or housing element update, a lot of our documents were translated. We have translated documents on our website. I don't know that the housing element, the complete draft the complete document is translated. But one of the things we've committed to as a program is getting cultural sensitivity training for some of our staff members, code enforcement specifically. And so we have started those discussions with our code enforcement department essentially, and are trying to either make a plan for maybe trying to work with other cities who also have the similar requirements, so that way we can kind of take advantage of some economies of scale and try to maybe do a group training. We could end up with an individualized curriculum that gets just rolled out to our staff, but we're basically evaluating right now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I support that. That's great, not just for code enforcement, all staff. So that's something good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I had a question about the SB 10 ordinance. I don't know if we have talked about that before. It seemed new to me. We've talked about it generally, but I didn't realize it was on the work plan.
Yeah, it's been a general like, hey, this is all the state
Yeah.
law that we have to deal with, and it's on the list.
Okay, great. I was really, really pleased to see that. So that's great. Yes, well, go ahead.
Yeah, we were at a training, Councilmember Harvey and I last week, and SB 1164 Newman, Senator Newman, talked about property tax for ADUs, and there is something coming up, and I don't know if that's on our list of where if the ADU is rented out, then maybe the property owner might be exempt from taxes for 15 years, and that really affects cities. So that's something kind of to watch, and I don't know if that's anything in here, but that's something to consider.
Yeah, thank you. I was not aware of that.
Yeah, what number was that one?
SB 1164.
All right. Are there any other questions? Okay, let's open it to public comment. Is there anybody in the chambers who would like to make a public comment about this? All right, come on up.
Who decided that it was 60, 34, 39, 101?
It was the Association of Bay Area Governments, as far as I understand, that makes the RENA allocations.
101 on the top scale just makes no sense to me. It's a waste to me. And so I don't know why that is a number that we have to abide by. And I don't understand these numbers anyway, and who decides and why. And when we're discussing 0 to 30, and the housing that we have in town that are run by Burbank Housing is subsidized housing, HUD pays, and they do not get services. These people are living independently. They don't get services. There's a manager living there. So getting more subsidized housing built would be that 0 to 30, which would not require services. So I don't know what you're talking about, Noah. I don't understand what you're saying, that it requires services, because it doesn't. And I think that that is the very vulnerable population that needs support. And why that is not even on the list and wouldn't apply as housing makes no sense to me either. And this development along major transit stops, when transit doesn't stop here, I mean, not enough to make a difference, makes no sense to me either. So why we don't work on getting transit to run? It would be certainly lovely to have bus service and train service, and I don't know how it happens aside from taxing myself so that we can all ride free and have this run. So there's more that needs to be done so that housing can be built, so that parking doesn't need to happen, so that people can ride, so that we can actually support
30 seconds.
this. So, yeah, I'm confused about subsidized housing using HUD and this idea that there has to be services, because that it's not true to me. I don't understand it.
All right, thank you for your comment. Welcome, Neil.
Yes, good evening, Council. I asked this question previously of some years ago, but when I was in Bend and in other cities, we came across one-room apartment complexes. And I think there's a more technical name for that, but essentially they were a low rental place that people could, and Bend gets a lot of snow, so it's very cold, people have to get out of that. But that seems to be something that we can't do, or somebody who wants to provide housing can't do. Somebody can't build something very simple in Cotati, from what I understood of the questions I asked at the time, which would be one-room apartments in a complex, I don't know, 16 rooms in a building, and it's done other places. I've certainly seen low-income people elsewhere. So there is a need to somehow capture this low income in some way to support the community, but I just phrased that question. I was hearing today on a completely other parameter that Catholic Charities was helping some form of housing. I think it was more emergency beds for people who were homeless. This was through the Santa Rosa Police Department. They had an agreement that could do that. So it probably doesn't apply here, but I know there are other groups out there. who may be looking to supply this, but we have to allow it in our code, is the way I understand it. So anyway, thank you very much.
All right, thank you for your comment. Can we please go to Zoom?
Thank you, Mayor Sparks. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. Mayor Sparks, that'll end public comment.
All right, thank you. So bringing this back to council, I believe we are asked to identify any concerns or directions for staff. Is there anything that hasn't been addressed already that folks on the council would like to bring up? Okay, I had just had one general comment, which is not really related to the exact things that were listed on the table, but more to the general pattern of developers bringing projects, getting them entitled, and then the projects kind of sitting and not getting built. And Councilmember Harvey kind of brought up some of these concerns that often it's tied to inability to get financing and factors like that, and things that we entitle and we try to remove roadblocks, but they just don't end up getting built. And I've been spending a lot of time trying to think, what can we do to move some of these forward? And I think we need to get better as a council and as a staff, all of us, we need to get better at understanding the world of real estate development and seeing what's possible and what's going to pencil, because things come in and we look at them, we approve them, we say this would be great, but it's not realistic. And so that reality comes home to roost in it not getting built for years and years. So I think that's something that I'm going to prioritize personally, just trying to understand this world better. And I don't know if there's anything we can do. So I might be just talking with the city manager about this in the future, as I've been reflecting on this too, to strengthen our capacity as a city to kind of understand that world and have a clearer idea of what, when the project comes forward, is this a realistic project that's actually could be built in the real world, so that that can inform our decisions a little better. So I know that doesn't show up on the report anywhere, but that's what I've been thinking about a lot. Yeah.
To follow on to that, is there anything that we can do in our application process, in that whole process, to have a earlier indication as to whether or not what they're putting forward to us is something that they're ever going to build? Is it feasible, or are they just, throwing spaghetti at the ceiling and see what sticks?
Yeah, so I would like to speak to Ms. Berman's, just to clarify, when I said that the folks who are in the extremely low income category, I'm not intending to say they require any services. There's no project that would be approved that would require it, but I did agree with her sentiment that those folks are the ones who are most likely to need support, which that's what supportive housing is. That's the point I was trying to make in that, and someone who was going to open a new housing development that was targeting extremely low income folks would likely be looking to ensure that those folks had that support so they could be successful in that, and residing there. And that's the point I was trying to make. So just to clarify, getting back to the point of project viability. So, it's a fairly intensive and expensive process for someone to even file an application. So I would say, when an application comes through the door, it is imagined by a team of fairly sophisticated people to be a viable project. Some of the issues that affect that are market changes over the timeline, right? So if it takes a year to get something entitled, a lot can happen in the economy in a year with regards to access to financing, the rent rates, all those things. And I think that, combined with just some of the specific developers we've had here who have tried to get projects approved and done, and their kind of experience level, and then some of the unique characteristics of Cotati over the course of the time that we've seen these projects not get built, I think are kind of all combined with some of those market changes to result in some of these projects sitting. I will say the projects we're looking at now, I do not anticipate them being inviable financially. The scale, the number of units, the rental rates that we're getting now here in Sonoma County, the desirability of Sonoma County rentals, it's fairly strong, but all that could change in a relatively short period of time. So, you know, it is anything, even from the day it's approved, it's a year at a minimum before it's constructed. So there's a lot of changes.
Right, but is there anything that we can do to help with that? I know that we have streamlined our process. It almost seems like we need to do something a little bit differently in order to achieve that. When I think about, you know, you mentioned the Flay Haven, and we talked about the 6 units down on East. We've approved them, and there's nothing happening.
Yeah. So, I will say, so the 6 units,
Yeah.
they're struggling with PG&E. PG&E will not even give them a timeline for when they would be able to design their project, let alone replace the transformer. That's one thing that we know about. The state's aware of it. ABAG MTC has asked us for individual stories, so that, because they're getting questions from the legislature about how is PG&E or is PG&E affecting development in your community. So that is an issue that is I would say, almost worldwide with respect to transformer availability. There are no transformers right now available. That is a huge constraint on the ability to get new development happening. And that you could do internet searches, there's a ton of articles talk about it. That is a global issue. So some of these things we can't not control, to your point. Development, because of the timelines, what we could do is try to shorten the timelines, try to introduce as much certainty as possible in our process, because uncertainty is the challenge for any business. And if you can't plan out what your expenses are going to be and the timelines are going to be, it adds to the level of risk, and some people aren't going to be willing to take those risks. Other things we could do, intensify density, so there's more units available, so then there's more basically financial return on an investment, but that impacts neighborhoods. There's parking issues associated with that, because now we can't even require parking within a half mile of the smart station. 0 parking can be required within the half mile of the smart station. So if we were to introduce density and also have to acknowledge no parking to a room full of folks who are going to be living right next door to that change, that's going to be there's going to be a lot of strong opinions about that. But we are looking at options, and I think one thing that we're going to talk about when we bring back the Plex housing is, I was just in a meeting with a developer. He owns property. He's a contractor. He's ready to do something. And I said, well, you could go the density bonus route, and that'll get you base zone plus 50% density if you give us 15% affordable housing, which you have to do anyway. Or you could do the cottage housing route, which will give you 100% density bonus, but it's 100% subject to the council approving that. And they said, I like density bonus because it's more certain. So that's just one example of a conversation that I just had a month ago. So when we bring back the Plex housing, we do plan to have a conversation about maybe revisiting cottage housing as a way to try to incentivize folks to build more units, but also in a way that we like to wrestle back some of the kind of the local control over it, because we don't have to give somebody the double density that lives in the cottage ordinance. But if we make it to where you will get that if you do X, Y, and Z, then that makes it more certain. And if they can afford to do that X, Y, and Z, then they'll do it. And then we could get more units and a better project in theory. So that's just one example. We're thinking about this a lot, and it's hard to have that kind of nuanced conversation at the council level when you're talking about individual projects, but that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have the items in the table D really highlighted as something we're working on.
So just a follow-up, so I wasn't aware that conversation had actually happened, but that our choice to keep the cottage housing as a fully discretionary process is actually now driving people away from it because the state has come in with by right provisions.
So again, it just gets back to certainty, right? Anybody making a business decision, something that's guaranteed or something that is a black box, You're going to weigh your options to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Just your appetite for risk, right? So, I will say, and this was done, you know, I mean, it was light years ago now, right? When we did the cottage housing ordinance compared to all the changes under state law, that was explicit in his conversation. Like, if I don't know that I'm going to get that, why would I take all the time and effort to go through, pay my architect, pay my engineer, take the time to invest all of that in a maybe when I have this other guaranteed process?
And light years are a measure of distance, not time.
Sorry about that.
I'm so sorry. I couldn't resist. Okay. Any other comments or direction? Okay. I think we're good to file the report. And we don't need a motion for this, do we? Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you to Eli. Appreciate your presentation. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to apologize for both an English and astronomy teacher, you know, correcting your work. But I really do want to say thank you. It was very, very helpful. And the tables were great. And thank you for the slightly larger one too. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're good to move on to the general plan annual report.
And Eli is going to be handling this one as well.
Welcome back.
All right. Thank you. Once again, my name is Eli Ariola. I'm a planning technician here at the city. And now I will be presenting the 2023 General Plan Annual Progress Report. Next slide, please. For some very general background, the General Plan identifies the city's vision for future development and provides a framework for decision making. The current General Plan was adopted in 2015, and the General Plan APR provides a status update on the progress in implementing the actions within each of the elements of the General Plan, exclusive of the housing element. This APR is also due to both the Governor's Office of Planning and Research and the HCD by April 1st. Next slide, please. Each element has a set of goals that are supported by objectives. Each objective has a set of policies and actions that implement the objective. The actions for each element are compiled into an implementation plan that staff has utilized as the format for the APR. To complete the APR, staff gathered information from the responsible city departments regarding progress made on each action during 2023. Next slide, please. There are two primary types of actions in the implementation plan: ongoing and project-oriented. The ongoing actions include city services, maintenance, partnerships, and data collection. Project-oriented actions include capital improvements, new programs, and code or policy updates. The level of specificity and complexity of each action varies from actions that call for the city to ensure that new development will underground its associated utilities to actions that call out specific circulation improvements to be made throughout the city. This APR was submitted to the Planning Commission on March 18th, and we submitted both the General Plan APR and the Housing Element APR to the state yesterday, March 25th. Next slide, please. And now, Director House.
I just wanted to highlight a few things as the council reviews this APR. Obviously, the format's very different. This one, we are allowed to create our own format, and so because we had the implementation matrix in the general plan, we were just able to leverage that, which was very helpful. They range, some of the tasks and goals range from being aspirational to being very specific. Sometimes it's individual departments, sometimes it's combinations of departments. For the most part, there's no priorities set in the document, so it's just something to note. What staff does is we kind of evaluate some of these tasks, see how they fit well into the council goals for the year, some of the strategies that we're trying to implement based on the direction we get, the budget availability, and you'll see some of the goals even acknowledge that as funding is available is a very common goal or timeline. And then some of them are outdated, and so it's just worth noting that the general plan currently identifies 116 as being widened to 4 lanes all the way through town, and I don't think anybody intends to do that, but that's currently in the general plan as it is today. And so lastly, I'll just point out that some of these things are also even beyond the city's control. And so just this document is very different in that it's not reporting specific kind of metrics as much as it is kind of just keeping tabs on some of the aspirational goals that were set in 2015, and just something for the public and the council to be aware of as they review this and think about where we are with moving forward with implementation. And that's all I wanted to add.
Next slide, please. Once again, it is recommended by the Community Development Department that City Council review the provided information, identify any concerns or direction for staff, and file the report for future discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Do the council have questions? Yes.
On the, I don't know which is the best way for me to get you to the right page. Is it the table page or the packet page or the item? Which would be most helpful to you?
So usually the packet page is the best for me.
Okay, so on page 141, they're talking about compostable materials and things. And I was curious as to why we didn't put anything in there about our participation in the food collection for the Tier 1 producers and the gleaning for fruits and vegetables, because we have participated in that, and I think that that's a program that's, working its way through the SB 1383, process, and we did purchase a truck to be able to do that and work with the Conservation Corps. So that was a question as to why we wouldn't take credit for that. And then on the next packet page, we talk about the e-waste and stuff. And we actually host e-waste collection events every year in Cotati, so I feel like we should note that. Let's see here. A little ways down here. On page, let's see, packet page 166. We have Ashley's name in there. I don't know if that was meant to be in there or not. Maybe so, maybe not. And then one more, and that is, so on packet page 176, where we talk about the parks and things, we didn't mention anything about the improvements we made with Cotati Park and Putnam and Cater. So I thought that those would be noteworthy. And that's kind of all I have. But great report, thanks, lots of details.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Sure. Let me see, page 104. Just kind of, I know we're not prioritizing, this is just kind of general information, but this is the Grahamstein Highway redesign, just kind of putting emphasis on that page. I know a lot of it has to do with funding, but hopefully that'll be something that's kind of on track to kind of move forward. Let me see, another item, it was page 123. This is one with CHW-1F, the one working with the health department and the county and stakeholders to promote healthy lifestyle choices, explore strategies for community outreach materials. Just again, making sure that we include Spanish in some of that going out. And then I had a question about page, what is this, 127 on the training for Cotati residents and city staff on basic first aid and cardiopulmonary. You put in a note Narcan training. I think that would be good for community residents to hold some sort of workshop for residents wanting, and there's nonprofits that do that training. Narcan, especially because fentanyl is a big statewide issue that we're going through. And I think those are, otherwise it's a lot of great aspirational things that we could work on in here. Thank you.
Right. I had a question about just the page numbering. It seemed like some of the pages were 11 and some of them were 22. It's like, if you look at the page numbers, just the way the report's laid out, every other page is 11 dash something. And then if the page number shows up on the right-hand side, it's 22 dash something. So it's just a little odd. I just noticed that tonight. And then I did have a question on packet page 163. The EV1, EV1E at the bottom is all about signage throughout the city and at the exit points of the entry points and entry and exit points to the city. And we've done so much with that, with the gateway stuff, and there's no comments on that. I guess it just says complete, but maybe we could add a little bit to highlight that we completed a lot, a lot in there. And I think Councilmember Harvey kind of covered the other things that I wanted to ask about already. Okay, any other questions before we go to public comment? Do you have questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I was, I guess, what page is this? 161, about the historical Cotati buildings. And it just says there's not a check on either complete or in progress. And I mean, I read the little note and it said refer projects to SHPO. Is that State Historical Preservation Organization? I'm just making that up. Is that
That's
accurate?
exactly right, except
Okay.
officer at the end, yeah.
Okay, so in other words, whatever historical buildings there may be in Cotati, we are not, as a city, intend to do anything to recognize them. We're expecting the state to do that. Is that accurate?
Well, I believe there are some policies that direct us to try to evaluate our historic buildings. I'd have to review it to give you specifics.
Okay,
But in the meantime, we have no designated landmarks, historic landmarks in this as structures in the city. The plaza itself is.
right.
But and so what that's referring to is if someone comes in to construct or demolish a building that might be eligible for registry, then we would refer it to the State Historic Preservation Officer for review. And it's a kind of a CEQA process, part of the environmental analysis.
Okay, but how would you know that that would need to be done?
Well, technically, under CEQA, any building over 60 years old is potentially eligible. So then, depending on the building, you would have the developer hire an architectural historian or someone to do an evaluation.
Okay, okay, great, thank you.
All right, any last questions before we open to public comment? All right, is there anyone in the chambers who would like to, oh, I'm sorry, I do have a comment card here. Neil Hancock, would you like to make a comment?
Yes, good evening, Council. Trying to follow procedure or just, doing stuff there. But so appreciate that we've got the general plan review open and these items are being tracked. I mean, it's very valuable to do that. On PDF page 104, the topic that I have been bringing up a lot, the safe crossing of Highway 116 at West Cotati Avenue, identified as realignment of West Cotati Avenue to intersect with Gravenstein Highway, that's on page 104, has a status column that the 35% of the design for the junction has been done. Now, I spent 4 hours on Sunday looking at that and also writing the letter to the council because I'm trying to make it visible when something is safe or not safe. I mean, we have a process that historically hasn't produced very safe pedestrian roads and things. So I'm just making it visible that when I look at that junction, and particularly, I consider how cross East Cotati Avenue Road coming here, when I walk, there is a safe medium right in the middle of the road. So that's East Cotati Avenue at Charles Street. I cross over, there's a protected medium. I can look one direction, I can cross over, depending on how the traffic is coming round the traffic lights fast, I can pause and then proceed more slowly on that. This junction is on a busier road. I mean, I know that it's Caltrans, and I have put forward that there should be a process of putting our design plans, the pedestrian act plan in place, the active transportation plan, before we do these designs, but hey, there's reality. So I don't see on that 35% design that there is a safe pedestrian place for a wheelchair to come, or 3 or 4 people to, if they're crossing over as a family. I've specifically put in there what I think are the steps that somebody will take, a new resident of that area, as they come to explore Cotati. There are some safety features in this junction design, which is nice to be able to have, but if we go out for funding, and the funding is then based on the bed size and the road bed size, and then later on we want to expand it by 5 feet, and that's disallowed, you know, it really makes the whole process of public consultation a bit of a mockery. So I'm just bringing up that, looking at that design right now, and I don't know when it goes out for review, but it seems to me we should adjust it before we go out there looking for funding. I have been up here before, 2008, from the Valparaiso Bridge when that was completed, and I said, hey, look, you can't get a wheelchair across that bridge. 15 years later on, we still can't get a wheelchair across the bridge. Now, I mean, I can only make the comments sometimes on some of the issues and put it out there, but if it doesn't get taken up, that is now in the new plan, the active transportation plan. Hopefully something will happen with it, but I'm just making this visible and saying that I think there should be at least some looking at that plan. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comment. And would anyone else in the chambers like to make a comment? Can we go to Zoom, please?
Thank you, Mayor Sparks. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. Mayor Sparks, that'll end public comment.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any further discussion or direction to staff on this item? Okay, do you have what you need, or do we need to make a motion to approve this? All right. That completes our regular agenda, so we'll move on now to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So just a couple updates tonight. The water main flushing or cleaning operation is ongoing. So that began yesterday. We have 1 week of planned flushing, or 2 weeks, sorry, in the L section, and then also McGinnis, and then Hunter's Ridge, which is Clothier, Honor Place, Dorfman Drive, that area. And of course, notices went out to all the residents, so they should be aware when it is about to start in their neighborhood. The Cypress Sewer and Redwood Cypress Drive paving projects are also going on, as some of you know, because you sit in the detours of the traffic. So the sewer on Cypress, the sewer repairs are underway, and preliminary paving work on Redwood Drive has started. The sewer repairs are expected to wrap up on May 1st, and the paving work is expected to be done by July. The city entrance signage project, so the two-post city entry sign work is scheduled to begin. We have submittals soon and fabrications. We just signed the contract, so we expect them to mobilize somewhere around early June, and it'll take about a week to put the signs in at all the entry points. The sidewalk gap closure project design's progressing, and we're planning to hold a public workshop in early April for residents along the route. So, I mean, once that's early-ish, maybe mid-April, I think that's still a floating date. We need to get the designs in and then do some internal evaluation, then we'll schedule that public workshop. And then just a reminder that the ATP, the draft closed for public review on March 25th. Currently, we're planning on Planning Commission meeting on April 15th and a City Council meeting on May 14th for review and hopefully adoption at the end of that process. This past Saturday was our annual Bunny Brunch event, and it went great. The rain did hold out long enough for everyone to finish their egg hunt, and it was sold out again, like it has been every year. And everyone had fun with breakfast with the bunny. And then this Thursday, we're delivering our bunnygrams. The baskets are stuffed with filled eggs and other goodies, and it's also sold out. So it's, anyway, very popular events. We're still conducting our online survey for the renovations at Sunflower Park, including the addition of a playground that doesn't currently exist at that park. And this survey will remain open until the end of March. And then the link you can find on the city's homepage under City News. April 27th, we're hosting our annual community yard sale from 8 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. in the Cotati Room behind City Hall. And we're accepting donations for that Wednesday, April 24th from 3 to 7 p.m. and Thursday, April 25th from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And all unsold items are donated to the Redwood Gospel Mission after the event. Summer camp registration is also open. We have Camp Cotati day camp for 9 weeks this summer, 6 weeks of Sandy Loam Farm Camp. We have Spanish camp, multiple children's theaters camp, and we've just opened up space at Camp Cotati for 4-year-old children. So previously it was 5 was the age limit, but now it's 4, which is new for us. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you. I had a question about the public workshop for the sidewalk gap closure. Will we be also, I noticed that a petition was sent into the Planning Commission from a few dozen residents in that area. I spoke with the sender of the petition, and he kind of described that a lot of people might not feel comfortable coming to a workshop and talking in front of people. So would there be a way to kind of disseminate the plans as they progress to anyone who's interested in that project, so they could give feedback in writing if they're not comfortable coming to participate?
Yeah, I mean, we'll post it on our projects in progress page and let people know that they can find it there. You can comment directly.
They can comment directly there on
through
that?
that, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Whoops. Do we have camp for seniors at Sandy Loam?
Well, right now we're just talking about children's camp, but there's a variety of other events and things happening on the farm that's all age.
Okay. Thank you. So with that, we'll go to council member reports. Would you like to start us off?
Sure. Okay, so on March 14th, I went to the Groundwater Sustainability Agency meeting in place of Councilmember Harvey. They set a special meeting to approve the budget because they needed a supermajority to pass it. But what we did discuss was the new rate calculation, and there was no agreement because the comments were that it was too high at $45.70 per acre foot per year. So they asked GSA staff to go back and rework the numbers. Let's see. I went last week to Cal City's Environmental Quality Policy Committee. The general meeting talked about the budget overall, that's $38 billion, but the Legislative Analyst's Office says it's maybe closer to $73 billion. And it was caused because of slower growth, large revenue forecast that was missed for several years, and tax fund extensions. I did mention already the SB 1164 with the property tax on ADUs. I did attend the environmental quality policy, talked about urban water conservation regulations, which I think don't apply to us because you have to have at least 3,000 water connections to qualify for that regulation. I don't think we're there yet, but we can talk after if you want about that. I did take notes. But the big thing that we talked about was electricity fixed charge discussion, which included a presentation from the CPUC Public Advocate's Office. There was a lot of discussion from all the cities on how it would affect jurisdictions with CCAs like Sonoma Clean Power. And there was a lot of mention of distrust of PG&E at the meeting. PG&E and Southern California Edison had representatives that spoke during public comment. And our charge was to decide on a position to recommend to the Cal City's Board of Directors. And we were split 30 and 31 to oppose or support. So ultimately, after many friendly amendments and motions, we ended on taking a position of watching AB 1989 in case we do need to take a position in the future. So that was from our meeting last week. So that's my report. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes.
Yes, I attended the policy committee meetings with Sylvia. It was very interesting. We got updates from all the different lobbyists, which was interesting. And I think the most interesting one was about the budget, but very interesting that one group thinks that it's a $73 billion deficit, and another group thinks it's 38. That's quite a big difference, but we'll see what happens with that. We had a couple of items in our police policy committee and took positions on those items, none of which really impact us at this moment. Secondarily, I attended the special meeting for the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, and after waiting 10 minutes, we finally did get our majority that needed to be there, and we were able to pass the budget adjustment and the preliminary budget, but there was a lot of concern about, again, about the increase in the per acre foot amount. So currently it is at $40 per acre foot per year, which for rural residents, which are the most vocal in all of it, that is, they're considered to have a half of that because of their usage. So they're getting $20. So with the things that we have going on, and the corrections that have been made to water usage, there were a lot of corrections. So originally when that $40 was set, we were looking at 20,574 acre feet as the denominator, kind of like what we had with the water agency. In reality, after all the adjustments were made and corrections, and we kind of trued up everything with folks, it's the denominator is 18,612, which right away puts us $4.26 per acre foot short. So we have to deal with that. And then in addition to that, there's been inflation and some other items that we're having to be able to do. So the good news is we got $5.4 million in grant funding. The bad news is there's a whole lot of paperwork and work you have to do in order to deal with that. So that has fallen upon us, as well as some other state mandated things. So folks are not happy with that because, as Sylvia said, it comes up to $45.74, and folks were a little bit upset about that. So we created an ad hoc. So we will be looking at that, but it may mean that, either we have to move forward with that, or we might have to, delay some things. So we'll see where that ends up, but that's kind of where that's at. And we will have another special meeting in May to go over what we came up with, and then the budget needs to be approved in June. So more to come.
Great, thank you. Did you have anything to report?
Yeah, no, I had spring break last week and spent it in bed. I was super, super sick, so I did not attend any of the things that I was supposed to because I fortunately was really sick. Not COVID, just not well. But I am well enough to still do Coffee with Kay tomorrow. So anybody who is interested, please come on down, Redwood Cafe, 6 to 8 tomorrow. Let me know what's working for you, what you'd like us to look into here on the council. And I really do appreciate anyone who comes and lets me know what they're thinking about. Thanks.
Great, thank you. I don't have too much to report. I went to the education 2x2 meeting and it was canceled. So good thing you didn't show up. And the only other thing I have to mention is remind everyone that we have the Mayors and Council Members Associating meeting we'll be hosting in the Katati Room on Thursday, April 11th. So I encourage y'all to come if you can. And that's it for my report. Does it start at 6 o'clock? Do you remember?
The general membership is like 6:30, I think, and then the program starts at 7, I believe.
Yeah, we can send that out.
And the board of directors starts at 6. I believe general membership's at 6:30.
Yeah.
Okay, there will be food. Okay. Okay, at this time, we will open it up for public comment on non-action agenda items. Would anyone in the chambers like to make a comment? Can we open it to Zoom, please?
Thank you, Mayor Sparks. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. Mayor Sparks, that'll end public comment.
Okay, and then we are going to go into a closed session. We will have a conference with the city labor negotiators, Government Code Section 54957.6. The city designated representative is the city manager or designee, and the employee organization is the Cotati Police Officers Association and the Cotati Police Management Association. Let's reopen public comment if anyone wants to make a comment on the closed session item before we go into it. Is there anyone in the chambers who would like to comment on this closed session item? And Zoom?
Once again, speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. Mayor Sparks, that'll end public comment.
Okay, thank you very much. We will take a 10-minute recess and then we will start the closed session at 10 minutes until 8. Right, thank you. we are back from closed session. We have nothing to report out of closed session. The last item is information received after the agenda was posted. Did we have any information?
Yes, there was one public comment received regarding item 11A. So that was uploaded to the web agenda and provided here in print in the chamber tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are adjourned. All right, we are back from closed session. We have nothing to report. Is there any information received after the agenda was posted?
Yes, there were a total of, I believe, 5 public comments received, 4 of them regarding the active transportation plan and 1 of them regarding the budget for Sonoma Water. Those were all posted to the web agenda and available here in print in the chamber tonight.
All right, thank you for that. The meeting is adjourned.
Yep. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Carla, can you do roll call, please?
Commissioner Long. Commissioner Berman.
Here.
Commissioner Savage.
Here.
Vice Chair Moffett. Here. Chair Gilardi.
Here. Item 3, approval of the minutes. I want to make a comment that we received a letter from Lori Alderman regarding the minutes. Staff is going to look into the minutes and review them to see if any changes are needed. Are there any other changes we see for the minutes? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve the minutes.
Can I have a second? Seconded. All those in favor? Oh, excuse me. Roll call. I'm used to the old-fashioned way.